to others. And he went through, Phil spoke about him being 12 and learning in wisdom and growing in that. And then he went through baptism and temptations. And today, what does Jesus do as he starts out his public ministry? Phil kind of shared briefly on that last week. He goes and he builds consistent and committed relationships with people, with a core group of people. And so that's our first verse for today, Luke chapter 6, verse 12 to 16. I bet you could name 7 of the apostles or 6. All 12 is really hard. All right, so I'm going to not quiz you. I'm actually just going to give you the answer. So here are his core 12 apostles. It says, one of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. Simon, whom he called Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was also called a zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. We don't want that after your name. Okay, and Judas Iscariot. I would say this is Jesus' life group. Say it with me, life group. His 12 consistent, committed relationships that he would do life with. This was his life group. An eclectic group of guys. You got a tax collector, a few fishermen, a zealot, which is like, those like super talkers who just want to like be passionate about everything. That's the zealot. A financial guru. They would do life together over 3 years. Jesus would be with them. Now, the Gospels don't give a lot of detail into what doing life together meant behind the scenes. Because I think Todd and I were talking about this before service, we think Jesus would just pull out his flannel graph. You know what I mean? Like put the stickies up. They'd be holding lambs. Kumbaya's going. Like that was life for them. I think there was so much more. Why? Because we know what that means. They ate together. They celebrated together. They grieved together. They confronted each other, supported each other, served one another, and did many other things. So let's imagine together what life in Jesus' life group look like, okay? So, first thing, imagine. Jesus goes to a wedding. Who's dancing? You got Matthew and you got Judas doing the like hype, right? I can't do the thing, but you don't think they were doing that? Jesus is like, yo, they are killing it. Let's make more wine. Okay, maybe it wasn't that way, but imagine with me, or the cha-cha. You ever been to a wedding with Sherry? The cha-cha is her thing. So you got Philip doing the cha-cha, okay? Just back it up. Okay, what do you think? Here's another imagine. What do you think happened when the Samaritan Cowboys played the Judean Eagles? What do you think happened? Who cheered for who? Or do you see Bart and Simon discussing the upcoming Roman elections and their different views? How many of those things do you get in the mail? Oh my gosh, right? But you hear Thomas saying, hey, pass the matzah. Or is it rice and beans again? Jesus, come on. Right? They were doing life together. They didn't win the Powerball. The Romans had one. No, they didn't. But the point is this, that there was a group of people sharing life together. And that was actually the method of Jesus. The mode of his life was calling people to a consistent and committed relationship with him. And that was his life group. That was his priority. And it was so that he would make disciples, so that people would learn what it meant to believe and have faith and follow him. And they would be ones that would go out and reveal to others what it meant to live life in the kingdom of God. How do you do this thing called life when we're in this public arena as Jesus was? And in his ministry, especially his public, God bless you, he didn't take or give them 3 words, the fast way, the flashy way, or the fancy way to live life out and make disciples and prepare them to change the world. Remember, he only had 3 years. So in the context of what I think I would be feeling would be, I got to get this thing done fast, fancy, and flashy. How many people can I get in this thing? How will this last? What's going to happen if I only have 3 years of my public ministry? And we go, man, that seems so short. But again, the wisdom of being at two memorials this week reminds me that we feel the same thing. That we have this inside feeling of going, life is short, go. Life is short, do something about it. And sometimes that moves us and motivates us in the way of Jesus in a good way. Sometimes not. Because it makes us think it's better be flashy, fancy, and fast. Both the way that I grow as a disciple of Jesus and knowing him, and the way that I teach others how and live life with others. See, fast discipleship looks like this. I've got a problem and I want it solved now. Those people aren't getting it. They're slowing my progress. Let's move on. Right? They're still messed up. They're still this. Let's move on. Those losses happen. I don't have time to stop and grieve and remember. Just keep going. You got to go fast. Limits are for later. Limits are for later. I don't have time. I'm busy. Instead of saying, I'm busy, what if we just said, I have limits? And there's only areas of my life I can focus for right now. I throw a few Bible passages at an issue and hope it fixes it for me and for you. See, flashy discipleship, that was fast. Flashy discipleship says, who am I hanging around? Who do I know? Look at what I'm doing and who I'm with, that I define how I'm growing with Jesus and how I'm making disciples this way. What have I produced, and what's the next best thing? Where can I go today? What's the next best thing happening? Or maybe we get tempted to have this fancy type of discipleship, meaning I have to know all the answers in order to help someone or follow Jesus. I have to look good. You know, how you doing? Great. Oh, just amazing. Isn't Jesus the best? I can do all things, right? It's just like, it's got to look really good. I can't take time for the hard stuff. That situation doesn't bother me. It's routine in my life. Oh, it doesn't bother me. Oh, it doesn't bother me. And yet, that's not the discipleship, the model of following Jesus. It's not fast, it's not flashy, and it's not fancy. That's not his public ministry, and that's not ours. In fact, in Matthew 13, verse 31 to 33, Jesus reveals the kingdom this way with two parables. It says, he told them a parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in the field. Though it is the smallest of all the seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of all garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. He told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked through all the dough. What do we learn from that? Is that the way of discipleship that Jesus modeled and revealed to us with this committed group, his life group, was that it's slow, it's sacrificial, and it's simple. That's his mode. That's his model. That's what we follow. What do I mean by slow? Jesus' way involves taking time for the deep work and transformation of God in our life. It's not going to happen today, tomorrow, in a week, in 2 weeks. It's time together with Jesus. It's walking with people through their own process of slow, deep work of God. That's why Jesus, I think, knew, I better get them close. I better spend some real intentional time with the core group of people, because it's going to take a lot of time. This involves looking back at our family of origin and my motives and bringing them before God in both awareness and healing. That how I grew up, that the messages that I heard or maybe didn't hear but took in and absorbed actually make an impact in the way I'm loving people today, in the way I act today. This type of life involves limits, or discipleship involves limits, slowing down for loving union with God. It involves conflict and confrontation, not letting things slip by because takes too long to address, but taking time to understand why I feel hurt, why I'm frustrated, why that was a pain to me in my relationship with that person, and actually sitting down over a period of time, sometimes with counselors and mediators, to go, I got to deal with this. This is discipleship. It's slow. And it means sitting with people in their grief and present in their joys and inviting people into it with us. Jesus could have spread himself really, really thin with a lot of people. But he was very intentional to say, hey, you 12, can we be consistent and committed? Can we do the slow way of following Abba, Father, and learn to live life this way? And it's not only slow, but it's sacrificial. It involves laying down our ego and our gifts at the feet of Jesus as we engage others in that consistent and committed relationship. It's about spending time seeing others grow and be encouraged, leaving something comfortable so that more people could hear, see, and experience the love of God. It's about being committed to people that I think maybe are different than me or a little more messed up than me, like that's even true. But, we have that, It's about his kingdom and glory and my time, my talents, and my treasures. And I'm going to add this, my family commitments. I think Phil said it awesome last week. He said, church is intentionally choosing the hard, the arduous, the long road of inner renewal through relationships with broken and wounded people. Church is intentionally choosing. Somebody said say it twice. I got to listen. If you're in the front row, you could tell me stuff. I'm listening, all right? Long road of inner renewal through relationships with broken and wounded people. No, okay. You didn't pay for that one. All right. I'm telling you, it takes sacrifice to go, it's about you, not me. And it takes sacrifice to go, I'm going to commit to being consistently in your life over time and over a long period of time. And it takes sacrifice to say, I have these wonderful relationships over here, but oh my goodness, there are other people that need the same thing. And I'm committed to Jesus' mode of doing life and discipleship. And then it's simple. I was prepping for this, and I go, man, Jesus' way is simple. When we think it needs to be flashy and fancy and fast, we put all these things on ourselves. We build all these things up. And Jesus says, would you pour your life into other people? Would you have relationships that are committed to each other, that are on mission with Jesus, and would you be a family? And man, when that happens, it ripples, it replicates and multiplies, and things birth out of life that you're doing. Following Jesus has always been about a humble, authentic faith in Jesus, not knowing all the answers, not looking good and having theology degrees and Bible degrees, but a humble, authentic faith. Having faith in his life and his death and his resurrection, in trusting his power, his abilities, his purposes, and in doing life with a core group. You're going to hear that over and over today. Doing life with a core group of committed and consistent people who want to be on mission, being transformed by God together. That's discipleship. That's Jesus' public ministry. Slow, sacrificial, simple. And it was that way of Jesus that, man, you see, like the mustard seed, like the yeast that's spread out, that you can't identify the yeast in there, but man, when you step out of it and see the dough, or honestly, when we step out 2,000 years after Jesus had 3 years of ministry on earth, we see billions upon billions over the centuries who have followed Jesus, who have known his love and his salvation and received eternal life. And it started with his life group. 12 core, consistent, and committed people bound together saying, this is how we're going to do life. This is how we're going to do it. I love that. It started with his life group. It was slow, it was sacrificial, and it was simple. And that's been a real big story of my life. Over the last 6 years or so, Pastor Ryan here kind of knocked me upside the head and was just like, yo, 6 years ago, I was like, who are you in committed relationships with? And I go, Ryan, I'm busy, man. I got 4 kids. No. Canadians speak that way, by the way. No. Okay. So this just in, Eagles are winning 7-0. No, I have no idea. All right, so my story. I'm way off. So I said, okay, let's figure this out. 6 a.m. Paul Carlson and I were like, let's get a group of guys together. 6 a.m. at his house in Exton, in the basement. I brought the coffee. If you talk to them, it was the worst coffee ever. I'm making it with my little coffee machine. Horrible. But it was my step in to say, I need committed, consistent relationships in my life to do this thing with Jesus, to live this out. And it was a couple years in that a guy named Bob Newman came in, and we're like, Bob's driving from all the way southern Westchester, all the way up to Exton, and then going back to Kennett Square. And I'm like, all right, Bob, we've been doing life together. What would it look like if we invited more people into this and did something in Westchester? So we started something in Shumama's and consistently built relationships with people, consistent group of people, and then life outside of that. And then later on, last year, there was a group of men that met together Tuesday morning, and some of them were like, well, what would it look like if we invited more people? If we expanded the table in relationship by being somewhere else so more people could experience this love that we have from Jesus and this salvation. So they started something at Westchester Diner. Tom Skelly and Andy Thrift and team, and some went there. And now there's a new group in Downingtown at Green Street is launching because they see what's going on through Tuesday or Wednesday, and Paul's group's still going, and Andy's talking to them, and they're like, how do we get other men around us for a consistent, committed relationship? Throughout the years, I've found this to be a place of safety, not of judgment, where the pastor card doesn't even matter. Like, that's the joy for me. It doesn't matter. I walk in, I'm like, I got these struggles. Guys, pray for my marriage. Pray for my kids that are hitting teenage world. Hey, we are 6-0 in our soccer game. Pray that we win the championship. Whatever it might be, right? But I've found it to be a great place of encouragement and wisdom where I don't feel judged, and I can honestly share openly and authentically. I found it to be a place of protection. That committed group of people protect me from the deceit of sin in my life. That, man, it's so easy to just slip up and not be the man God called me to be, or the husband God called me to be, or the father God called me to be. And these men go, no, we're not going to let that happen. Let's be around you. Here's an example. 6 months ago, I share in Life Group, and I say, hey, my son has sarcastically been telling me, Dad, you got anger issues. Like, sarcastically. And I'm like, okay, that's sarcasm, but there's something he believes out of that. And so I had to do an evaluation. I go, why is it that he's saying that to me? And I realized I can go from 0 to 60 like really quick when I'm frustrated with my kids. So what do? I don't hide it. I go to my life group, those committed men who I don't feel judged by and love me, and I go, guys, help me in this. I'm not being the dad I want to be, that Jesus wants me to be. And it's slow. And they follow up with me, and they prayed for me, and guys call me out of the blue going, how's your son and your relationship, and did you talk to him? They give me wisdom about it. That's life. We have fun together. Poker, and all I'll say is poker. I found life and joy in using my gifts of encouragement. It's a place where other guys are around, and I could say, invite people into, and man, have a front row seat. Have a front row seat of seeing God transform people's lives. And it's so, so beautiful. seen people get baptized, seen people come to know Jesus and start a relationship, been in people's weddings. Wow, we're doing life together. I've become, because of my life group, a better husband, a better father, friend, and pastor. And I've gotten to see the kingdom of God expand through the slow, the sacrificial, and the simple way of Jesus. So, life group guys, thank you. Thanks for pouring into my life, giving me a safe place to be not a pastor, but a friend and a man following Jesus. But I didn't want you to just hear it from me. I wanted you to also hear from one of my guys in the life group. So I'm going to invite up Doug Wachenfeld. I want him to share a little bit of his story. Yeah, Doug's got the lanyard on because he was in the Tigers room downstairs with the 2-year-olds. So if he's tired, it's because he just was hanging with the 2-year-olds. So come on up, Doug. Let me get you a stool. This is for me because I'm tired. No, okay. So, Doug, we've been doing life together. Yes. I'm very thankful for it. Tell them a little bit about you. Yeah, you need a mic. Tell them. I was going to translate for you. Tell them a little bit about you, how long you've been at Prov, and then I'll ask you another question. We'll have you share.
Sure, thanks, Emanuele. My wife Sue and I have been at Prov about 3 years now. We actually followed our kids, some of our kids here, and I got to say it's been one of the greatest blessings that we've experienced to be a part of this community, this family. It's just incredible.
All right. So, have you guys seen Doug before? You guys have seen Doug, right? He's everywhere, by the way. Did you win the poker tournament the other week? Or the chili cook-off?
I didn't actually make it.
All right. Well, he is a big Eagles fan, so I'm thankful he's here instead of watching the Eagles game. So, Doug, you've had a challenge over the last year in your life that you consistently brought up and shared with us. Maybe you can speak to that challenge and what it was like, and maybe how it impacted you through the year.
Sure. So a year ago, this past September, I went into work like any other normal day and found out that my job had been eliminated. If you've ever gone through that experience, it's pretty devastating. The range of emotions that you feel, I wrote some of them down. Fear, loss of identity, bitterness, depression. I mean, these are all like real emotions that come out when you go through something like that. And I think we really need to dispel the myth that, as Christians, that somehow we're immune, to these kinds of emotions when we go through life experiences like that. And I think that's just not accurate. I think that's why I really appreciate the Psalms so much, because when you read through the Psalms, you see the raw emotion that people feel. David and others that wrote them, going through really hard life experiences. We live in a fallen world. Things happen. That's not to say that God isn't in control or somehow removed from the situations, but we have to process all those emotions and feelings. And being a part of several different life groups, throughout our tenure here at Prov have certainly been instrumental in walking through that with us. Something I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, tell us, Doug, thanks for sharing your emotions in it as well, because I think when we go through things, especially job loss, and some of you here might be in that transition, like it's a place that's can go deep emotionally and isolate. And so I've seen you not isolate over the last year. Tell us a little bit about, how you kind of face that challenge, but with others around you, and how you even engage that.
So we've really been privileged to be part of, myself and my wife and I have been part of several different life groups. Prov. We started out with the Warnings and the Kellys and the Delpinos, and that was a great experience over a couple of years. And then we moved out to Elverson, and we're thinking, what are we going to do for life group out here? We're 35 minutes from Prov, and as God would have it, the Mike and Joy Gleason formed a group, about 10 minutes from our house. And not only us, but 5 other couples have joined that group, and it's been a tremendous support, particularly through this last year and this experience of the job loss. I could be honest with them about the emotions that I just mentioned, feeling. Never felt judged, as Emanuele said. Felt very supported, and just helping in so many different ways. Ministering to us as a couple, ministering to us as individuals, helping in practical ways. I can't even name all of them, but just feeling like we're part of this community, and feeling that to try and do it in isolation is just is not the right way to do it. To press in versus pulling back. And in the past, I've been guilty of trying to avoid conflict, and that's not really the solution, because inevitably it comes out. If you suppress emotions, if you pull back, if you're not open and transparent, some way somehow it's going to bubble to the surface. And I just think being part of the couples groups, also being part of the men's groups, the Tuesday group and the Wednesday group, the men I've mentioned, has also been instrumental. The guys doing life together, Andy and Tom on Wednesday, Emanuele and Bob on Tuesdays. It's been just a joy and a blessing to be able to be honest, open, transparent. Guys have cried at the table. We've laughed. We laugh hard. We really experience life and all the challenges that get thrown at us, and there's certainly plenty. So that throughout this past year, of my job loss, I felt very supported, very loved, very encouraged every time that I would be able to go.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for sharing that. By the way, we do Christmas carols as well in Shumama's around Christmas time. They hate me for bringing Christmas carol songs.
Yeah. I just wanted to share a couple other groups that have been instrumental in working through this past year. I'm in the Barnabas group, co-led by Tony Staccato and Glenn Clark and Scott Walker downstairs. They meet every Monday morning at 6:30. If you're in transition, I highly recommend you plugging in there. It's a networking group. It's also they start with Bible study. We have people from all different walks of life, CEOs down to technicians, and it's a tremendous support group, and it meets right down here in the basement. Crosspoint Ministries, sometimes you need professional help. I went for counseling with Brett Payne, and that was a tremendous source of insight and inspiration into why I was feeling the way I was feeling, how to deal with the emotions, how to process them, how to work through them, and really give them over to God. And we've just seen the tremendous faithfulness of God throughout this past year. EHS, what I've learned there through Dave Wheatus and his ministry, and also with Crosspoint, this deeper journey, which is a series of 8 retreats over 2 years, just to deepen your walk with God, and really get into the depths of discipleship and spiritual disciplines. So, all these things have really worked together over the past year to support me through what is a hard experience. And I'm sure a lot of you, most of you, all of you probably have been through something difficult in the past year. I would really encourage you to get plugged in. Don't pull back. Don't isolate. There's a tremendous amount of resources here at Prov. And, like I said, we're very thankful for everybody's input over the past year. And I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to my wife, Sue, 35 years. She's been through me through
Sue.
thick and thin. I don't know if she knew what she was getting into when she said I do, for better or for worse. But
for better. It's for better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Doug, again, went into community. He didn't know this was going to come, meaning like this situation over the last year. But because he had a footing in relationship, and that was the way he was following Jesus, it helped him kind of process through and engage it even further. Community and doing life together is never one way. Okay, so the truth we might hear here is Doug received when he was in the group. And yes, that's there. But we got to remember, in his sharing and bringing, the others who are doing life get something. Right? So I'm going to invite Andy briefly. Andy's going to share. Andy Thrift. Come on up, Andy. So Andy.
Hey, buddy.
Hey. So tell us a little bit about you real quick. And then, what did you receive?
Yeah, so Skelly and I lead a crew, a men's life group on Wednesday mornings. And as that was kind of a thing out of Bob and Emanuele's crew on Tuesday mornings. And for us, we're like, man, we got to get some cool dudes. And I love people of different generations. And I'm like, we should steal Doug. And so we did very effectively. And Doug became part of our crew. It was real cool. Love being around guys, different, we got 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in our group, which is wonderful. And then a few months later, I hear Doug's cheating on us. And he's still hanging with E-Man and Bob. And then it gets worse. A few months later, Tony Stancato joins us. And Doug is cheating on us twice. And on Mondays, he's going to hang with Tony. And I don't know about you, but when life is really, really hard for me, I go away from men. I don't go closer like Doug did. So that encouraged me a lot. Even though you're cheating on us, you should just be there Wednesdays.
Hey, would you pray for
Yeah,
Doug?
I'd love to.
Can we just pray for him?
God, thanks for Doug. Thanks for his life. Thanks for how you've shown up powerfully. A couple weeks ago with a great job offer and a wonderful position, and God, you're good. And God, we pray for the many men, the many women, maybe some college students, maybe some young 20s that are in some form of unpleasantness and want to retreat and don't want to dive in. I pray they dive in like Doug did. And God, would there be a few men and women right now that are thinking, maybe it's time for me to birth out of my group and start a new one. I pray we'd dial into community, Jesus. Amen.
Thanks, Gus.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the end of the story. The end of the story was I was at a men's ministry event here several months ago during the summer, and was talking to an individual after the session who had heard I was in transition. He requested I send him a resume, which I did, and he had a networking contact that through a process of interviews allowed me to accept the position 5 weeks ago. Just don't discount God's intervention through hardship. He's faithful, and the story may not end the way that you think it should, but I can promise you that he's for you, and that good fruit will come from it. So thanks.
Well, doing life at Providence has always, the priority has always been this way. From the beginning, 12 years ago, it was, who are you in committed relationships with? When are you meeting? And how are you doing life outside of a Sunday? So that when we gather on a Sunday, it is a celebration and a coming together of the life that is happening outside of these walls. And Sunday is like, my people are here. Who can I invite in? Like this, we've done life together, whether it's campaigners, high school students through the week, whether at college campuses, small groups meeting, at homes on Wednesday morning or Wednesday evening with the women here. Doing life together this way has always been the model here at Providence. So here's a map for us. This map shows many of the life groups, not all, but many of the life groups in the area. And I'm not sure how I don't think you can see it super, super clear. Other than there's that one bubble in the way corner. That's because we don't even know where Pottstown is, all right? Like, the Gleasons are somewhere up north. No, they're not really at Norristown. We should be moving them over. But if you could see something, I just want to communicate some vision. There are pockets and places in this Delaware County and western Chester County where there are not groups. There are not people saying, let's have committed relationships together. For some this morning, I'm calling you out and saying, why isn't it you? If you live out in Coatesville, Thorndale, Downingtown, Delaware County, Aston, Malvern, Fraser, if the way of Jesus is simple and sacrificial, then any of us can join together and say, let's have committed relationships with each other and with Jesus. For some of you who've been in a group and live out there, it's uncomfortable, but you may have to steal Doug Wackenfeld and go start something. Right? He's okay. He'll go. Right? But it's a beautiful thing. Talk with your leader in your life group and go, wouldn't it be cool if we multiplied what's happening here and expanded the table out there in relationships with people? Some of you are in life group but haven't been committed and consistent core members of that group. There have been things every week or every other week that's like, my kid got this. I got this event. My call this morning is, would you renew your consistency and commitment to your guys, to your women, to your friends, to your life group members? And would you do that together? And if you're here and you're like, how do I build those relationships and enter in? Please talk with us in the Connection Center right after church. Meg McGee, Sam, Brittany Robertson will be there, as well as some others. And we would love to say, hey, let's figure this out with you and help you so you live life in committed relationship with others. I'm going to invite up the worship team, and we are going to take communion together today. Communion, Jesus with his core group, with his life group, the day before he died and knew he was going to sacrifice his life so that life could spread out throughout the known world. He said, hey guys, I am committed to you. This is my body. And so when you receive, you're going to hold on to it. We're going to sing a song, and then I'll come back up after the song. But when you receive the wafer, the bread, it reminds us that Jesus is committed to us. And he says, this is my body that is broken for you. I have sacrificed my life for you because I'm committed to it. And then you're going to get a little cup with juice, and it reminds us what Jesus said at that dinner with his life group. He said, this is my blood that is shed for you. That salvation, that this new covenant, this new relationship with God is found in no one else but me and in faith in me. I am committed to you. If you're here today and you've kind of started life with Jesus already, you've accepted his salvation into your life over the last whatever number of years, would you take the time during the song to renew your commitment? Renew your commitment to those around you and to the Lord in relationship. And if you're here this morning and someone invited you and you've not said, Jesus, I believe what you've done for me, I would just say, would this morning be the morning where you turn away from doing life any other way? We call that sin, that you would turn away from sin and that you would turn towards Jesus, the one who says, I am committed to you, the author and perfecter of your faith. Would you follow me? I'm going to invite up the prayer team on the sides. If that's you during this song, would you come up, and our prayer team would love to pray with you to say, yeah, Jesus, I want to follow you, and will new life flow out of that.